I suppose what I find puzzling about the entire thing is that if they're sort of employing multiple gang stalkers, the cost of the sort of monetary cost of this operation would be significant. So there must be, in one sense, significant gains for the perpetrators. And I was just wondering if you had any sort of speculations what those gains might be.
So as a previous social structure researcher, and I was basically I was punished so harshly because I was basically a social scientist researcher that would probably be able to bring this all together. But it's my suspicion that it's somebody with highly consolidated amount of power. I'm the pioneering researcher on this, and I barely have scratched the surface of this. And like I know that nobody else knows a lot because I barely know anything in any aspect. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So, but that's when people are like, "Oh, it doesn't make a lot of sense." I'm like, "Yeah, well, because I'm working on a 15-inch MacBook with no budget." I liken it to Hitler's big lie. So people just don't want to believe it, so they reject it, and it's easier. It's way easier to just reject it and be like, "Oh, this isn't happening," than to actually postulate and believe it might be true. Aristotle's old saying was that, the mark of an intelligent mind is to entertain the idea without holding it as true. And I'm sorry to say that it seems as though, as you can start to tell, that it, if you entertain the idea, the world makes a lot more sense, especially in terms of this street theater.
It seemed to me the thing that I found most curious is that there seemed to be an incredible diversity amongst is it the TIs you call them, the sort of victims of this. That there seems to be, I couldn't see a particular commonality between the victims, and I was wondering if you could see one that I hadn't noticed.
A lot of these researchers, even the experts, think it's at random, but this is what I couldn't believe, because even the people that were reading what it is that the amount of people that are involved in this, they thought it was random. But if you look at the demographic section of the new blog posts, which I'll make sure to leave in my description and send you, because the main blog posts are the Machine Organized Gangstalking program, where I explain it, and the Machine Strategic Operations, Tactical Capabilities, and Silent Noise Sequences. But in the first one, I explain the demographics. So there's actually a website that's dedicated to this. It's called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. So freedomfchs.com, where they actually have a membership that you can pay. It's nominal, $15 a month. I'm sorry, $15 for the year. And they've done statistics, and it's in the demographics section. I'm actually looking at it right now. It says 76%, so it's not really minorities. 90% graduated high school, 50% graduated college, and 14% have master's and doctoral degrees. So, which means if you just look at this is probably where my social structure and sociological aspect shines through, is if you look at a subset of the population. If you look at the population as a whole, I don't even think 50% have college degrees. Like, that's like in the 15th percentile or something like that. It's probably not above 30%. So, and only like a point something, point like 0.06% of the entire population or something like that has a master or doctoral degree. Masters and doctoral degrees are rare. But in this group, it's 14%. That's more than 10%. That's more than 1/10. So my argument through this whole thing is that the TIs, targeted individuals, so these people that are getting stalked to the point of torture and to kill themselves through suicide because it's so bad, is because it's silencing intelligent individuals. It's silencing mainly dissenters, people that speak out about, the tragedy that is, the world and society and how it's functioning. Again, which is my suspicion about somebody protecting the power structure, which is basically, it's like the old saying in America about Republicans. It's fat old man scared of change.
Right. So in your sort of model, your speculation is that it's people who are the people who are behind gang stalking are people who are attempting in some way to maintain the status quo.
Yeah, knowingly or unknowingly.
Could you explain what you mean by that?
So basically, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is like the just like the CIA is the president's here in America. The CIA is the president's private army, as you know, turn of phrase, kind of joked about. But the FBI is kind of like the Federal Reserve's um, private self-monitoring preservation mechanism. Basically, if you dissent about it, you'll probably be put on a list or something like that. Although it's completely and utterly unconstitutional and creates debt bondage, as Thomas Jefferson would like to talk about. Um, but the fact is that these systems of control are created in order to preserve social structure aspects. So this is no different than these agencies that are there to protect a social structure that is inherently and fundamentally flawed. But they don't care. But they want to protect their power structure and stay in power. So they have social mechanisms to keep that there, such as like the CIA and the FBI. And this machine or this gang stalking program is just another one. So I liken it to that of COINTELPRO, which was it's basically COINTELPRO 2.0, very a lot more silent, and COINTELPRO was actually used to silence Martin Luther King, um, blackmail him, death threats, all this kind of stuff to actually thwart Dr. Martin Luther King from having any success in the civil rights era.
In Britain, we've certainly had a lot of sort of post Snowden uh, um, revelations about the police, the normal police force infiltrating political activism groups, which were sort of non-violent, and in order to disrupt and dissuade them from, which is not in the police's official public remit anyway. So I'm certain that sort of thing definitely goes on, and it sort of does make sense that gang stalking could be another sort of arm of the same beast, as it were.
And it's just silent. So if you actually use these directed energy weapons with a microwave gun, which they have, you could actually pull like, and this is if you look in, it's in the psychotronics section, and I show a video. Looking at it now, it's called military ray gun, electromagnetic radiation weapon. And if you pull this across basically a group of gathered individuals, you can get them to disperse. So the military wants to use this. This is the only aspect, is if they actually used it in war, it would be better, but they're using it on civilians. So it's kind of horrible because they do it like consistently over a long term to make these people's lives a living HELL. But it's just, they could use these type of things. So um, not only would they not have to like show that they're using it, or they wouldn't have to talk about it, but they could use it against like domestic gathering of citizens protesting, in order to be able to squall and silent dissent. One of the things I talk about too in this, these directed energy weapons, they actually call it an active denial system. So it's like kind of, it's like, yeah, it's kind of this Orwellian twist on it. Um, on like, so we're going to call it an active denial system because that's what we're going to do. We're just going to act as though it doesn't exist, and we're going to deny.
It's incredible in one sense that they'd have the audacity to title it that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I will say with directed energy weapons, you can cause, this is, I talk about this as well in the blog post, you can cause mental illness with these types of things. And basically, so if you antagonize these people to basically commit suicide, and the torture program is designed to torture these people until they actually kill themselves through suicide because they can't take it anymore. You can cause mental illness, specifically make it look like schizophrenia when it's not, but definitely depression until suicide. So Yeah, and I'm looking at the video right now where the Dr. Bari Trower talks about how if you target a gland or an eye or a heart, basically a gland, you can basically cause a psychiatric illness. Yeah, this program is designed to drive individuals to suicide, and that's universally understood over basically all TIs targeting individuals.
What is the what is the commonest way that this ends up? I mean, does it ever sort of go away by itself, or are people targeted until they commit suicide or go insane? Like, what's the general way that it sort of the end game, the final chapter in a gang stalking program?
How it resolves itself.
Yes.
So, okay, so first of all, we're going to do this in two parts. We're going to say the ultimate goal of the program, and then we're going to say the ultimate goal of the TIs. If you could remind me of that. The goal of the program, as these experts all talk about, is basically it's a test or an experiment on a small subset of the population in order for a larger application of human experimentation and control. So, talks about how directed energy weapons are being used on individuals in small groups to test their applicability and then implement on larger populations. Um, the fact is, every expert, including me, believes that the gang stalking program is an experimentation in human control, including Dr. Robert Duncan, who's a scientist that worked on this and admits it's being used to torture citizens, Dr. John Hall, Dr. David Posner, and Dr. Bari Trower, and this former U.S. intelligence officer says it best. It would appear as those being targeted are simply objects who I see as being disposable. Once full control is established over a major percentage of the population, and enough of the population is silenced and unwilling to stick their necks out, that would be inevitably be heading towards a Holocaust.
Yikes.
Yep. As in unfortunately, as in a historical precedence, I basically set this up throughout the entire writing that it starts as though from Project Paperclip. What happened after the Nuremberg trials from World War II? We inducted a bunch of Nazi scientists in the American system, and other governments inducted Nazi scientists into their system as well, basically usurping the Nuremberg trials that basically happened through Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is basically now the CIA. The CIA funded MK Ultra. MK Ultra was a mind control, basically torture program, was given different names and budgets, and that is now known as what we call a gang stalking. All the Dr. Bari Trower talks about this, and he talks about how there's Nazi origins, and there's one notable InfoWars by Alec Jones report that shows the lineage of this coming up through history. So it's basically consistent with what Nazi Germany and Hitler were trying to do, which they did create a Holocaust of the Jews. And what I try to show is that this is kind of happening again on a small subset of the population with these targeted individuals or intelligent intellectuals that are being silently tortured until suicide. And that's kind of the end game, is to bring it to a larger application for a wider set of the entire population. So it's basically in its experimental phase right now and being tested on a small subset of the population, which is these intelligent individuals. So, and basically that's consistent with what I talk about in the third wave experiment, which was an experiment by a teacher who creates like the conditions that created Nazi Germany, where basically in the classrooms they created slogans such as strength through unity. You'd have to address the teacher as sir. Every time you would do it, you'd have to stand. They created all these slogans, and it got out of control. So what the teacher did was created this, and then they had a certain code that all these students created. It started spreading to other schools, and it was about strength through community. And basically what happened was what was used to be the leaders in the classroom that were more intelligent and verbal and articulate were replaced by class leaders that were more physically superior. So basically it bullied the intelligent people out to where they actually left the classroom, and then they would scold them as they left. So that's basically what kind of happened in Nazi Germany as well. We do have historical instances of individuals standing up in Nazi Germany and saying that this is absolutely wrong, but they were either killed, they were silenced or killed, or they got out fast enough.
I suppose it's similar to what Mao was involved in his Cultural Revolution, with taking the intelligentsia and sticking them in sort of incredibly menial, repetitive, and isolating tasks, so that they'd be unable to form a kind of um, ideas-based resistance.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is like for the economic suppression of these TIs. So it basically silences the really intelligent by suppressing their economic condition. I've experienced this for years, where basically my economic opportunities are ruined to the point where I have to do some sort of stupid remedial task. Not only is it designed to suppress people and silence them, but basically through like, speech is money, money is speech. So to be able to advertise anything or get your word out there, they basically suppress the economic condition of these individuals and opportunities, especially in intellectual spheres, to be reputable, to have credibility, and to be able to speak about what they could be perceived as happening, or if something does happen, they can speak out. The other thing is to make them weak, which is why the directed energy weapons are used against like physical body parts, to create some sort of muscle atrophy. So I actually spend a lot of time, and this is where we'll start to get into the goals of the TIs to be able to fight this. I spend a considerable amount of time on my physical body to make sure that I am strong physically. Um, I maintain the fact that it is very appropriate for me to be physically and mentally imposing, which is why I created some of the stuff that you will read. You'll just have to read it. I'm just not going to go into it here unless you want to. But the thing that is, I have a fight back section, and one of the guys that there's Dr. David Posner. He was all of these guys that this is again keeping consistent with the same rhetoric. All the guys that fight back and do it successfully are all doctors, so they have tertiary income for a real career. They get paid real money. They not only have the ability to afford to live, which is basically what the system destroys, the Gangstalking system destroys, but they're intellectuals and they have credibility, so people listen to them, so it could be understood. And they inherently trust them because people inherently trust doctors. So Dr. David Posner was starting to get stalked by this, and he didn't want to live in fear, so he decided to, what basically he talks about is fighting back. And what he basically talks about, and I have a quote by him, and he says, this is talking about like A Threat to Justice Anywhere is a Threat to Justice Everywhere by Dr. Martin Luther King, and he talks about former TI himself, and tired of watching young people being tortured. Dr. Posner talks about how you should keep a daily log and not to let stalkers control your life, how you have the right to record a crime, and if you don't scare, they will. So basically, he talks about how you're being stalked as a TI for a reason. Just like I'm talking about, they're intelligent, articulate people that are serve a threat to this system that is designed to silence intellectual dissent. That would poignantly point out this problem of this Holocaust that's being created, this like literally neo-Nazi 2.0 program, and you should basically, as long as you don't scare, so if you have this mentality of I won't be bullied, I won't be thwarted, I will talk about this, then it actually scares them because they're after you for a reason. They're not just like doing this just to do this. There is like an agenda at hand. So basically, he says that if you feel as though you're getting stalked, you need to record it. You need to keep a daily log, because what these people are afraid of is being exposed. So you basically expose your own gang stalking and continually show, like, I must have looked crazy for like at least a year before I started to figure this out. You know what I mean? But I kept a daily log, and a lot of the stuff I keep up, and I say this because, as a reference of, not only court purposes, but for other individuals that go through this experience, so they can learn from my mistakes, which took me quite a considerable amount of time in my eyes to correct.